For those of you that don't know me, my name's Jim Inman. For those of you that do know me, yeah, I still answer to Jimmy, always will. But when I was growing up, I grew up with a major inferiority complex. I never felt like anything I did was ever good enough. And how I got there is a different story. We won't go into that, but over the years, I kind of let it bleed into my adult life, and to the point where back several years ago, Hank and some other members of the church had asked me to take a pretty important position here at church, and I told them no, because I just didn't feel worthy. I didn't feel like I was good enough. We'll come back to that in a minute, but the main reason I wanted to tell this story was that a situation that happened to me in November of 2010. I became very ill. Went to doctors, and they did tests. They drew enough blood that I didn't know if I was going to have any left. But they did test after test, and they sent me to specialists, and nobody could figure out what was wrong. They just knew that my liver wasn't working properly, and they couldn't figure out why. And I lost 40 pounds. And in the words of one of my nurses, she told me later on, she said, "Mr. Inman, I thought we was going to lose you," and just about did. But I ended up with a specialist at Vanderbilt University, and he used to work at the Mayo Clinic, and even he couldn't figure out what was going on. But all I know is that when I started feeling better was when I started getting reports from different churches were putting me on their prayer list. I heard, this church had put me on the prayer list, that church, all over town. Everybody was putting me on the prayer list, and I was so thankful. And I began to start getting a little bit better. Doctors couldn't tell me why. I even had an ex-son-in-law that told me that they'd put me on their prayer list at his church up in Newport, Tennessee, and that made me feel good. But when I finally started getting a little bit better, I got out, was able to get out and move around a little bit. I was still weak, but I was able to move around and go places. I ran into a friend of mine, and I told her, that I was feeling better, and that I felt like it was because I had so many people praying for me, all across the county. And I told her about my ex-son-in-law telling me that, and I said, I've had people all over the state praying for me. And she looked at me and she says, no, Jimmy. And she named off several states where she had friends and relatives. She said, they've been praying for you in all those different states. It just filled my heart. But anyway, I held it together, and I told her thank you, that I appreciated it. And a few days later, once again, I was uptown, and I ran into a young lady that I used to coach softball when I was a coach at high school. And I relayed her that story, that I had people all across the United States praying for me. She shook her head and said, "No, Coach. While you were sick, I went on 3 mission trips in 3 different countries. And we had people in all 3 of those countries praying for you. I held it together just long enough to make it back to my truck." And my heart was just so filled, and the tears came. And I cried and I cried. Uncontrollably, I cried. That's hard for me because I grew up in a time when real men don't cry. Well, that's not true. But like I said, the doctors to this day still cannot tell me why I got better. I know why I got better. It was through the power of prayer. And through those darkest days, and then through my recovery, I learned a couple of things. One is that none of us are worthy. Just like I said, I felt like I was not worthy. None of us are worthy. It's the blood of Jesus that makes us worthy. And we ought to embrace any position that anybody asks us to fill here at church. Because Jesus is what makes us worthy. And the second thing is how awesome the power of prayer is. Like I said, the doctors to this day cannot tell me why I got better. But like I said, I do. I know. God decided to leave me here on this earth for a few more years. And I don't know how many more years, but I'm thankful for each and every day. And if you're one of those people that prayed for me during those dark days, I just want to say thank you. Thank you for your prayers. And keep praying. And, after I got better, I started telling that story about how the prayer helped me through it and got me through it. And for a couple years after that, I just kept telling the story. And it got to the point where I'd start telling the story and I'd see people kind of roll their eyes back in their head. They'd heard the story so many times and everything. So I kind of got to the point where I quit telling that story. But I'm going to keep telling the story. I'm going to keep telling it because it's my story. And so I'm going to go back to telling that story to anybody and everybody that would listen to me.